As a little girl, when I was like, I want to win the world title. And you work like your whole life to get there. And then you get to the top of the mountain and you think something profound is going to happen. And you're just like, okay, I'm here. Now what? Not much has changed. I'm still the same person with the same insecurities. And like, I thought that was going to like something magical was going to happen. And then you just realize like those moments are so short. And before you know it, the season starts all over again. And so I think it's really gotten me to, enjoy the journey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Compounding. The idea behind this podcast is to talk to people who are the very best at what they do, to uncover things that all of us can use to perform better or just be happier. And today we have an extra special guest, 5-time World Surf League Women's Tour Champion and gold medal winner, Carissa Moore. To say that Carissa is at the top of her field is a huge understatement. She's the only surfer in history, male or female, to win a WSL championship and a gold medal in the same year. At just 30 years old, she's already in the Surfers Hall of Fame and a legend of the sport. More importantly, she's a great human being who exemplifies the Hawaiian spirit of Aloha. Before we meet Carissa, a quick plug for our sponsors. This beautiful suite I'm sitting in right now was provided by the Prince Hotel in Waikiki. I'm a huge travel snob, and this is the place I stay when I'm in Honolulu. They have great service, great Hawaiian coffee, and one of the best sushi restaurants on Oahu. Next time you come to Oahu, I recommend checking it out at princewaikiki.com. Our second sponsor is Central Pacific Bank. CPB sponsors both Carissa and my company, Swell, and they made this whole thing happen. CPB is not only one of the best banks in Hawaii, they're one of the best banks in the country. Check out CPB at cpb.bank, and a special shout out to CPB's Chief Marketing Officer, my friend, Brant Farias, for helping me put this together. Now let's get on to the interview. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Compounding Podcast. I record every episode of Compounding on location. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that we're coming to you from one of the most beautiful places on earth. We're on the island of Oahu, which is home to today's guest, Carissa Moore. Aloha, Carissa.
Aloha.
Good to see you. So the idea behind this podcast, Carissa, is to talk to people who are the best at what they do. And what we're trying to learn are just a few things that the rest of us can apply in our lives, either to perform better or just to have a better life. And I can't think of a better guest to talk about how to have a great life than you. So I've got a ton of questions, but I want to start with a fun one that you've probably answered a few times, but I want to hear your answer live. You know, you've had an experience that very few people in the world and like even in history have had, which is winning a gold medal. So just tell our audience, like, how does it feel to win a gold medal?
Winning a gold medal was better than I could have ever imagined. I didn't know what to expect. Surfing, that was surfing's first time in the Olympics. And there was actually a lot of reserve and anticipation and anxiety and nerves around surfing being on that stage for the first time. And I was even a little bit hesitant. But it really, like, all the preparation couldn't have, really gotten me prepared for what was in store, what ended up happening. But it was, just like the attention and the media that came afterwards and the celebrations and the feelings. And it was all really cool. It was awesome.
I can imagine. It's got to be a kind of a weird feeling though, because like right up to the moment you win the gold, you can't think about that, right? You have to stay laser focused on the competition. And then all of a sudden it's like, because I think I was watching some interviews online and you said that at the time you said, this is all a blur to me. I haven't processed it yet. Have you processed it yet?
I think I still have to pinch myself to really feel like, oh my gosh, that actually happened. But it was like you said, it was something that obviously I really wanted to happen, but realistically going into the Olympics, there's just so many things that had to go my way, especially in surfing with Mother Nature. You never know what you're going to get. You need to have a little bit of luck on your side. And so for it to all come together was really special.
So many things can go wrong and you probably have to focus on those until it's over, right?
I mean, it's It's tricky. I think that's been one of the greatest lessons I've learned through the sport of surfing is how to let go and surrender to the universe, because I am a control freak. I am a perfectionist. Like I want to feel like I know what my outcome and my result is going to be. And I feel like if you want it too much, it's going to elude you even more. So it's finding that balance of like, okay, I'm going to check all my boxes. I'm going to prepare the best I can. But at the end of the day, it really is up to the universe, and you have to have faith that it's going to work out.
That's amazing. And I definitely, in a bit, we're going to dive into like the spiritual side of surfing, because to me, that's one of the coolest components of surfing. But I want to dive first into this idea of, enjoying the victory. Are you the type of person who is able to stop and smell the roses? Or when you win, you just kind of naturally like, okay, what's the next thing? Or is it somewhere in between? Like, were you able to like kind of stop and like, wow, this is actually, I did this?
No, I think, and I'm glad you say that, because I think as a human race, I don't know, I think it's embedded in us to just always strive for the next thing and keep working and going towards the next goal. And for a really long time, that's how I have been. Yeah. Until recently, I think I've realized, I'm like, gosh, like, the reality is you're going to lose more than you win in this game. So you really got to cherish those moments on top, and those moments when you work so hard for.
For sure.
I think my greatest fear at times has been this idea of complacency. And I'm like, oh, if I stop and smell the roses, like someone else is going to get ahead and I'm going to fall behind. But, you really do have to like take a moment to appreciate the work and all those positive like strides that you make, because I think that's what's going to help to fuel you to move forward.
I think any achiever can relate to that. Like you mentioned, like if you stop for too long, am I going to lose my edge? That's something that, and so it's a hard balance, because the flip side of that is if you don't stop and smell the roses, all of a sudden you wake up and all this stuff has happened and you never got to enjoy it, right? That's a tough balance to strike, because I tend to be wired the same way, where it's you've learned this lesson. You've learned to start smelling the roses a lot earlier than I did. I'm 52 and I'm just now learning to kind of stop and, oh, wow, this is actually, I've done a lot of great things. I ought to just enjoy this for a bit.
Totally. And I think too, on top of that, and which kind of ties in, is this idea of resting and recharging. And I've learned that part is super important to my optimal performance, is taking the time to reset, to slow down, to quiet the mind, to kind of just really like breathe in and soak in everything, because I don't feel like you can, it's that saying, disconnect to reconnect, right? So I feel like for me, my dad has always encouraged me from a young age to take my naps and, to take that time off. And especially like I stayed in school until I graduated in year 12. And I think having to go to school really got me to appreciate my time in the water, because I didn't get to surf all the time. And so it's good to step away so you can come back stronger.
Yeah, there's a kind of a modern day philosopher on Twitter. His name is Naval. And he says that the best way to perform is to perform like a lion, where when you go after you go on a hunt, you're all in. It's high intensity. But lions, the rest of the day, what are they doing? They're just laying around. I mean, the rest and recovery piece is something like, whether it's in athletics or in the business world, is something that people just don't focus on enough. Like, I think in athletics, eventually you have to, because you pretty quickly learn that you're not going to perform well if you don't. But somehow that hasn't quite made its way, because a lot of the work we do these days in the business world, it's not factory work where you're just standing on a line. It's knowledge work where you're using your brain, and it happens in these short, intense bursts, like surfing. And so I'm fascinated by that idea of like learning from athletes and, getting the rest, getting the recovery. How many hours a night do you sleep? I'm just curious now that you brought up naps.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's something that I'm trying to work on, is my quality of sleep. I partnered with Oura Ring a few years ago. Cool. And so I've really everyone kind of knows me as the professional napper on tour and off the tour. Anyone who knows me knows I love to sleep. But, so that's why I was very intrigued to get that more information. And what I've learned is like, I'm maybe not getting the quality of sleep I thought. I mean, I'm in bed probably by 8:39, and then I get up at like 5:36, but why am I still tired during the day? And so I'm learning, okay, there's little things that I can do heading into my rest that can help me feel really good in the morning.
But you're a good napper. Like, can you fall asleep kind of anywhere or?
Yes, anytime, anywhere.
You know what though? Like that, it's funny though, because years ago, I read a couple of books about Lance Armstrong. And one thing that I remember from that is he was a great napper, like on a plane, in a car, in a bus, 2 minutes. And I think that's probably common among a lot of athletes. And I wrote something about this recently where, Roger Federer, Serena Williams, a bunch of these top athletes, they sleep a ton, but you have to, right? I mean, that's the recovery part.
Yeah, no, I think for me, what's really cool about taking naps is it is a telling sign if I am stressed or if I'm not, because I cannot day sleep if there's anxiety. And so if I can sleep and take a nap during a contest, I know I'm in the exact place that I need to be to compete.
That's a great litmus test. Yeah. So if you're calm enough to take a nap, you're in a great place to compete. Awesome. Man, we're off to a great start. So transitioning away from the gold medal, because you've been asked that question a million times, but just as you look back on, you're still very young. You're 30 years old, right? But I drove in from the airport and there's like a 20-story tall mural of you with Duke, and I'm like, wow. So you've achieved a lot in your short time. When you look back, what are the things that stand out? I mean, obviously the gold medal, but are there other things that come to mind immediately about? And it could be anything, but just like some of the things you're really proud of.
Well, thank you so much. It is hard for me to stop and smell the roses and really look back and say out loud the things that I'm proud of. But I think at the top of my list is having a great relationship and marriage with my husband. We met as seniors in high school. So we're going on 12, 13 years of knowing each other and going into celebrating our 6th year of marriage in December. So far so good. And I feel like I love him more and more every day, which to me is a huge success. And I think just my relationships with my family and my friends are solid. So that's something that I put really high on my priority list. Getting a high school degree from Punahou is something I'm very proud of. And starting my charitable foundation, More Aloha, in 2018 is something that's near and dear to my heart. And to be able to see something that, I had a vision for, to see it come to life and see it grow and expand and hopefully make a positive impact on young girls and women is something that's really makes me smile.
I think it's really telling and amazing that the first thing you listed was your relationships. I often say that really at the end of the day, the only things that matter in life are relationships and experiences, and those two go together. And you're probably off the charts on the experiences side, but the fact that you recognize how important relationships are. And I could tell. I was doing a little background and was watching some videos. Your husband was in some of them, and I could tell you guys seem to have a great relationship. That's amazing because it's not easy, especially I can only imagine with the kind of lifestyle you're forced to lead as on the tour. It's not easy to make everything work.
No, that's a lot of credit to my husband. He is, he's just such a good man. He's totally confident in himself to take that supporting role 100,000% and be there for me, and he's kind of put aside his hopes and dreams to be there and help me live mine. And I just feel like we're such a unit. We're a strong unit. And hope you get to meet him sometime because he's a good one.
Absolutely amazing. All right. Well, I'd like to transition to something a little different, which is I want to talk about the Aloha spirit a little bit because my experience, I lived on the mainland my whole life and I worked for one of your sponsors, Central Pacific Bank, for a while. And so I spent a lot of time here during the pandemic. And, of course, everybody loves Hawaii. What I didn't realize until I started spending a lot of time here was that the best part is the people and this Aloha spirit. So, for you, even thinking about the Olympics again, you sort of have almost like two citizenships, right? It's like, being a Hawaiian is not the same as being a Texan. It's, you're an American, but the Hawaiian part is super important. And I'm just wondering, how do you think about that? Because in some ways it's almost like added pressure because you very much are representing Hawaii. Everybody knows that. And so how do you think about that? I mean, just the Aloha spirit, like being a native Hawaiian.
I don't look at it as a pressure thing at all. I think it fills me with pride and love and it kind of is that extra motivation when I'm, down in the trenches halfway across the world fighting for something, it's to know like, hey, like I'm not alone. I have this community of people that have like been behind me since the very beginning. And I think that is what is beautiful about growing up on an island is everybody is so close and family goes beyond blood. It's all the people that have like raised me in the lineups here in the surf. It's the people that I see at the grocery store. It's like,
how many aunties do you have?
Oh, countless. I can't even count them on my fingers.
It's a Hawaii thing.
Yeah. So, and I think just it's being able to sit on a bench next to someone and getting up 15 minutes later and feel like you've known them your whole life. And it's just that warmth, that genuine, just no judgment, unconditional, giving without wanting anything in return, that kindness. I think what's really cool is there's just an influx of culture and people here. So there isn't this filter. Everyone's on one level. Everyone loves because they just want to love you. And there's no, nothing holding you back.
Well, there's obviously some conflict given, the kind of past and how Hawaii became part of the U.S. But what I found was like you said, very little judgment. And if you're here for the right reasons, the people are just so welcoming and so warm. It's an amazing place. I always say, I came here for the place, but I fell in love with the people. It's really amazing. Well, to that end, my favorite thing that I found in my research was a piece of advice that your dad gave you. And I just love this. And this came from the More Aloha site. You said, back in 2018, when I was at a mental low and struggling to find passion and purpose in my surfing career, my dad encouraged me to ground myself in giving back. And that is just amazing because, I just wrote something about this the other day. We all get stuck in life, but not everyone gets unstuck. And it seems like counterintuitive, but the best way to get unstuck is to help someone else. And so can you talk about that period a little bit? In 2018 and like how you were feeling and then how you kind of came back by helping others?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so glad that you picked up on that because my dad has been so influential in my life since the very beginning. And, we'll rewind even more actually to my rookie season. And I was in a similar position where I was struggling to kind of find my place on tour and didn't know how to handle being away from home for the first time for a long period of time. And I wasn't performing well and I was losing. And I had finally gotten to the championship tour. This was my dream. And my dad was just like, what is going on? You have all this potential, but there's this little piece that you're missing. And it feels like you're being weighed down with this expectation. And so it was the third event of the season and we made our way to New Zealand. And it was New Zealand, there's something about it that reminds me a lot of home. They have a lot of the Aloha spirit there. And, there was a local surf club and we connected with them and my dad simply asked, he's like, hey, would you guys just be there for Riss? Like, welcome her into your community. And in return, like she would like to give whatever she wins from this event back to your club. And it was the first time that I really got to see what like the power of love could do. Like I was surfing for something bigger than myself. The result, how, the other girls, the judges, the conditions, all of it melted away. And it kind of just, I don't know. It's just, there's something about giving back, being a part of community that has always helped me find myself. Wow.
Well, I can tell and this I think is somewhat unique to surfing, but you're all in on it. This idea of like, you approach your job really holistically. Like, you talk to most athletes, what they're talking about, well, here's my training, here's my schedule, here's my coaching team. But you've mentioned very little of that. You talk mostly about Aloha spirit, love, and family. And it sounds like you view that as just critical to your performance.
Oh, it's super critical. It's everything. I think, we didn't even touch upon those years leading up to 2018, but those 3 years that I really kind of hit rock bottom in my competitive career was when I went back to the drawing board and I was like, okay, something has to change. And that's when I decided to redefine what success looked like for myself and took my power back, because I felt like I was going through the motions and doing it for everyone else, and it just didn't sit right with me. And so that's when I, really kind of came up with the core pillars and those values that would guide me to where I am today. And a lot of it was grounded in family and love, in giving back, because I really think that as humans, that's what we crave. We crave love, we crave community, and feeling like we're a part of something bigger. So what for me, like, that's more important. Or that gives me the freedom to perform at my best when I'm connected to those things, because that's the most important.
Wow. That's amazing. And by the way, I wrote those 3 pillars stood out to me when I was on the More Aloha site. So they're live authentically, be fearless, lead with love. I love those. That says it all. Wow. And to this idea of success, I want to read a quote. Let me find that you said when you were young. Let's see. So I was watching a video, and I think you were about 10 years old. You'll probably recognize this video. And you said you were being interviewed, and you said your dream was to be a pro surfer so you could travel the world with your board and your friends and just enjoy surfing. I was like, wow. A 10-year-old Carissa was way ahead of her time, because that's a pretty good definition of success. Is that sort of still the dream? Because that embodies a lot of the things you talked about. Is that sort of what it's about for you?
Totally. I think it's easy for there to be layers on top of that. I think as I've grown and throughout the journey, there's been different negative layers that have come on that. And the focus can be easily distracted on other things. But I feel like that's kind of what we all strive for, is to like take those layers, strip those layers off, and get back to little yous and me's, because I think that's the soul of who we are. And that's, I think, where we're living our best selves is little us. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And look, I'm 52. And when I tell my friends that my dream is to live in a van and just rock climb all the time, they think I'm kidding, but I'm actually pretty serious about it. Is like, yeah, I think you said it perfectly, like stripping away all the layers to what brings simple joy. And so, yeah, I can, maybe at the end of your career, you go back to traveling the world with your board and your friends and just enjoying surfing.
Yes.
You've got a lot to accomplish before then, though, I'm sure. All right. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about the spiritual component to surfing. We talked about it a little bit, but are there, I think surfing among maybe any other sport, and I like to think of rock climbing as like a sister sport in this sense, but it's a very spiritual sport. Like, and in fact, if you talk to surfers, that's like the first thing they talk about. Is not necessarily like the wave or the technique, but like the spiritual aspect to it. So are there other, you mentioned a couple things, but are there other life lessons that you've learned through the spiritual side of surfing that just kind of help you in the rest of your life?
I think my greatest lessons have come from surfing, and it would take me probably a full day to go through all of them. But, just thinking about rock climbing and surfing and how they are spiritual. And I think what's so beautiful about both of these sports is that it brings you to the present moment. And that's when, you can't not be anywhere but what's right in front of you. Otherwise, a set's going to roll in and you'll get pounded, or you'll let go, or you'll pick the wrong rock to climb next and you'll fall. So it's like you really have to immerse yourself in the moment. And I feel like it's so hard to do that today. I feel like there's so much coming at us 24/7. And so in those moments when I'm in the water, you're on the wall, like you're just there and you're at peace. And I think that, like you said before, that it's all about that joy in that moment. And
they call that that focus, they call it the flow state, right? And I don't know about you, but one of the things that attracted me to climbing was that I could tap that every time, that flow state. Is that the way it works for you when you get in the water?
It's hard sometimes to get there. There's moments in time where it all comes together for me, and like the confidence and the waves and, just everything feels right. But at other times it's really difficult to have them all come together.
When you're in a competition and you're in the zone and you're in that flow state, do you know it in the moment? Like you're like, I'm locked in.
Yeah. And there's no better feeling.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It gives me chills to even think about that.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like when you're in that state, like I'm going to win this thing? Like, is that because you know you're going to perform your best?
It's so funny. I don't think I've ever had, maybe once or twice in my whole career, have I ever felt like I got this, I'm going to win this thing. It's more of like this, just knowing that today there's no doubt that I'm not going to show up. Like I'm going to show up. I'm going to surf my best. I'm going to get my waves. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not worried about the result. I'm just right here, right now. And I think just like having that kind of undeniable confidence and like, that's nice.
Well, it's like, and you mentioned this earlier, but it's almost like a paradox that like by letting go of the result, you achieve better results.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's your approach.
Yes. It's hard to get there though.
I mean, look, the thing I love about talking to you is, most of my audience is business people, but literally every single thing we've talked about so far applies to people who have 9-to-5 jobs. Like all these same principles. Because it's about performance and showing up and, being the best person you can be and letting go of, embracing the process, not the outcome. These things apply to everything in life. All right. So I have another question for you. And based on our discussion so far, I'm very curious to hear how you're going to answer this because you seem to have achieved pretty good balance. But I saw an interview with Jerry Seinfeld recently, and he was talking to Howard Stern, and he said that he thinks about comedy every second of his life. Every moment he goes through life, he's thinking about, is that a joke? And he's crafting jokes. And he called it a torture, but a torture that he chooses. Like he's chosen that life. Is surfing that way for you? Do you think about surfing constantly? Or have you been able to, turn it off and compartmentalize?
It's been different at different times. Like I think at the beginning of my career, it was surfing, like 24/7. And I want to win and I want to be the best in the world all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think as I've grown and I've become a more diverse woman, there's other things that have my interest. And I think like we've talked about, just being able to turn off, that part of me is super important for me to stay motivated and not get burnt out. I think to be able to fill my cup in other ways actually brings like a different perspective to when I'm in the water or a different type of energy. So now it's not so much 24/7. I think when I'm in season, like right now, I'm definitely like wake up till I go to bed. I'm thinking, okay, what can I do to give myself the best chance at success? Because I'm excited and I'm passionate and I have a goal that I'm working towards. But yeah, it ebbs and flows. Like off season, I'm totally dog mom. I love scrapbooking, love hanging with the family. So it depends.
And what's the basic season in surfing? Like when's your off season happen?
So our season starts late January and runs to the end of September. Okay. So from October through January, we're cruising.
Yeah. That's a pretty short off season though. You're going hard for a long time.
You honestly, as a surfer, you don't really ever get off the treadmill till it's done. There's never been a part of my career. Oh, actually, this past off season was the first off season that I really took time for myself because I needed it, especially after losing the world title so closely. I was like, okay, I need some time away from it just to lick my wounds and heal properly. But I think I always want to try to stay ahead and get that edge. So I always want to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's Jerry Seinfeld called it torture, but it's really not torture because you love it.
And I enjoy it. Like the pursuit is so much fun. The progress is so much fun. The challenge, sometimes aggravating and frustrating, is so rewarding when you like make that maneuver or you step outside your comfort zone and you accomplish something you didn't think you could. So,
yeah. In climbing, we call it, we pick a really hard route to climb and we call it projecting. And it might take, 50 sessions, 100 sessions on that one route, memorizing every little move to get it. And what you have to learn and what's really rewarding is that the process becomes the reward.
Totally.
It's just the refinement of the craft. You know,
Yeah.
I think the best people at anything, they love the craft. And obviously you love the craft of surfing. You did from day one.
Yeah. It is crazy that you say that because, you know, as a little girl, when I was like, I want to win the world title. And you work like your whole life to get there. And then you get to the top of the mountain and you think something profound is going to happen. And you're just like, okay, I'm here. Now what? Not much has changed. I'm still the same person with the same insecurities. And like, I thought that was going to like something magical was going to happen. And then you just realize like those moments are so short. And before you know it, the season starts all over again. And so I think it's really gotten me to, enjoy the journey, enjoy every step of it. Cause like, that's the part that I look back on, like, that was cool.
Man, if you can live in the moment like that, that's the best way to live. There's one of my favorite quotes of all time was Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, the big clothing brand. He was a climber, and he had a quote that said something like, the thing about climbing mountains is when you get to the summit, there's nothing there. And it's so true. Like you said, you get to the top of the mountain and you look around like, okay.
Now what?
But eventually, so you do that, you take enough mountains, and eventually you realize, well, maybe I should just like start looking around while I'm climbing the mountain and actually enjoy that.
That's so true.
Yeah. Well, if you can do that at this young age, that's amazing. What's the hardest part of your lifestyle as a pro surfer? Because it's not all fun. Like you have you're a professional in the true sense, meaning like, you know, you don't just you don't just go out and surf. You have sponsors and obligations, and you have a foundation, and you have all these things. You know, what are the things that you struggle with? Because the surfing part you love, it comes naturally. But is there any part that you sort of like struggle with a little bit?
Honestly, I mean, I do enjoy it all sometimes. I miss home. Being away can be hard, and like lugging the board bags and the jet lag and sitting in the back of the plane. I wish I could sit in the front. Like those things can be hard sometimes. I think you know, the losing part and the dealing with processing it in a positive way and not letting those moments take your confidence or create self-doubt or overthinking, you know, what happens next. I think sometimes that stuff is something that I struggle with at times.
I have a feeling you're going to be sitting in the front of the plane very soon, if not on your own plane. You're on a rocket ship trajectory. What about like the fame and media attention side of it? Like, I'm sure you said that the gold medal, like you were blown away by the media attention. And is that something that feels natural to you? Does it get old?
I mean, I feel like I have the perfect balance. Like it's enough attention that I feel very flattered, and I get to meet new people, and but it's not so overwhelming that I can't not live like a normal like life and go to the grocery store in my pajamas or whatever.
That's the great thing about Hawaii, right? It's like no one cares.
No one cares. And I just try to look at it as like an opportunity to, you know, send a message, a positive message. And so I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. What about social media? One thing I noticed that actually kind of made me happy to see was you don't post a ton. Like you're not the multi-time a day social. How do you feel about social media?
I think social media, when used the right way, can serve as inspiration for others. And it's a great way to stay connected with your family and friends. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I fell into the trap of, you know, looking and comparing and bringing in myself down. And there's times where something pops up and then it just ruins my whole day. And so I'm like, okay, well, we need to find a balance here. So I try to like give myself only a certain time limit every day to go on. And I don't know, it's my favorite kinds of people to follow are those that are like being genuine and vulnerable and authentic and are relatable. Awesome.
Yeah, you know, there's this saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And social media is a great example of that. I was just telling my wife the other day, it's like, you know, no matter what success you've had, if you spend a lot of time on social media, you'll feel like an underperformer at some point.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's one of those things that takes you away from the present moment too. So
totally. Yes. It's good. I often wonder if on the whole social is a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's great in the sense that it does connect the world, but yeah, there's a lot of toxic stuff out there in social. So what does a typical day look like for you? Maybe we can even just use today. I don't know if today is a typical day, but you were in the water earlier today. Like, and I'm talking like when you're in Hawaii, because I know it's insanity when you're traveling. But, are there any specific routines, or are you a creature of habit? Do you like to play it by ear every day based on how you feel? Like, how does it, when you wake up in the morning, like, what does it look like?
Well, I'm a morning person, so most of the work gets done in the first half of the day. Surfing has taught me that you have to go with the flow, and every day is kind of the search for the best place with the best waves at the best tide. So I'm kind of at the whim with Mother Nature. So I kind of just pick my surfing time dependent on the conditions and stuff. But I try to surf once a day. I try to get a training session of some sort in once a day, a nap, some quality time with my husband and the dogs, or see, and also see some of my other family that I live within a short radius of most of my family. So awesome. Taking advantage of that while I'm home too.
Sounds like a pretty great day.
I know.
And just forgive my ignorance on surfing because I don't know much about it. But are you like when you go out this morning, are you trying to work on specific things or specific types of waves, or like how do you structure your training?
Yeah. So, my dad has been my coach since the very beginning. And, so like today I met up with my dad at the beach and we're surfing a location that is, very close to the types of conditions I'll be surfing in my next event. And he'll kind of give me a few like goals and objectives for the session. He'll be like, hey, I really want to see you turn tighter in the pocket, sit in this part of the lineup, try to stay moving. Some days we will even run some mock heats where he's like scoring me from afar with like hand signals and stuff. And it's more just, that practice of, producing scores so that I feel comfortable knowing what I need to get when I'm in a 30-minute time frame and have the jersey on.
That's amazing that your father's been your coach for so long, especially given that he seems to have a super holistic approach. And that's probably where you got it from. It's not just about the training or the athletic performance. It's about, being a great person and surrendering to the moment. It seems like you've learned a lot of lessons from him.
I have, and I'm very grateful. He's kind of been the ace that I've had in my back pocket since the beginning. He was a competitive ocean water swimmer when he was younger. So he definitely had an eye for thinking outside the box and strategy. And he always told me he wasn't the most talented swimmer, but he knew how to outsmart people. So he was one of the first people to start body surfing waves into the finish line. And then now everybody does it. So he's done a lot of things with me through training and the way that we've approached my career that has been a little bit different than everybody else. And I'm really grateful for him. Yeah.
That leads me to something I'm just curious about is because surfing to me is like, sort of like cycling. Like when people watch the Tour de France, if you don't know cycling, you have no idea what's going on. It looks like the most boring thing. When I watch surfing, it's hard for me to tell the nuances. So I'm curious, like, what are the things that you feel like are your strengths? Are you a tactician? You're good at catching the right way. Like you have some signature moves. Like what sets you apart? Because something sets you apart, or is it just that you're kind of like an all-arounder?
It's so hard to answer that. Like looking at myself, like probably ask my dad and he could answer a bit better than me.
What do others say though? Because you've probably heard others say, "Wow, Carissa is amazing at this."
I like to think that my technical ability is have a good foundation, and I like to think that I handle pressure well at times.
Yeah,
I know that it's good and bad at different times, but I think if I look at my overall career and journey, I think I've handled pressure well.
Yeah, because surfing is one of those sports where like you don't get a lot of shots, like you don't get redos when you're out there, and if you miss a move or fall. That's it, right? That's your heat.
Yeah, it's crazy because you are playing a chess game with your opponent, but you have to also focus on yourself and surfing your best. And then you're also surfing against Mother Nature and trying to like find the flow with her. So there's just so many different variables that go into it. And yeah, it's probably very tricky for someone who's coming in with a naked eye watching the sport for the first time. But when you get into it, it's super fun and it's very entertaining because every athlete has a different flavor or a different spice or way that they like to express themselves, which makes it really cool and unique to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of an artistic expression. That's amazing. And yeah, it's I'm sure there's just a ton of nuance for people who really understand the sport. And that's what makes it super enjoyable to watch. My wife, when I watch climbing on TV, she cannot believe that I will sit there for 2 hours and watch it. But there's, you understand the nuances. You're like, wow, that's amazing. They did that one little move with their foot. So I'm definitely not there with surfing. So, just a few more questions, but kind of in the spirit of starting to wrap up, 30 years old, you won the gold medal. You were the first person to win the World Surf League Championship and a gold medal in the same year, man or woman. You've won this World Surf League Championship 5 times. What fuels you to keep going? I think you've sort of answered this a little bit already, but you've proven yourself. But you seem like you charge just as hard now as you ever have. So what is it that kind of fuels you to keep going, especially when you're facing all the travel and it's just not easy to live that lifestyle, I'm sure sometimes.
I think the motivation for me has evolved over time, but the things that have stayed true to me is the pursuit of progress, the love of just riding the waves and wanting to just share more love and more aloha through this journey. And those are the things that no matter what will always keep me going.
Amazing. So what does that mean for you, sort of short term, you're in the thick of your career, you're going to keep doing your thing. Do you think much beyond that, like longer term, how that will evolve?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my husband and I definitely talk about like having kids and I want to be a mom and, surfing will always be a part of my life.
Of course.
But wearing a jersey, I don't think that I'll be doing that forever. But I'm enjoying it at the moment. And, this year I'm going to do the whole season. And this is also our qualifying year for the next Olympics. So we'll try to give it our best shot. And life is good. So I'm just trying to enjoy the moment. But yeah, future is simple. I'd like to be a mom one day and live in Hawaii.
Well,
and
from what I've seen, I would tend to agree. You do seem to have a pretty good life for sure. That's awesome. All right, just to cut 2 more questions and then we're done. What is the best wave you ever rode? Like when I say that, what comes to mind?
I feel very fortunate that I've had a few really amazing rides in my lifetime. But as of recent, I actually got my favorite wave that I've gotten recently was back in, I think it was November or early December, was at the Vans Pipe Masters. And, I think for me, if I look at my game, one of my biggest weaknesses or the thing that scares me the most is big, powerful barreling waves. Because barreling waves usually happen on shallow reef and there's just a lot of risk. And I'm always thinking about the risks. I'm a very calculated person. And so it's very hard for me to like step outside my comfort zone. I just don't like being uncomfortable. And so learning how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable is something I've tried to spend a good amount of effort doing in the last few years. And to see it all kind of come together at Pipeline, I ended up it was a really crazy, wild day and I was really intimidated and it was really difficult to find a good wave. It was like finding a needle in a haystack and somehow it came together and I just remember paddling to this wave and I almost missed it, but I kept paddling and that commitment took a lifetime to curate.
Oh, wow.
And so to be able to paddle into that wave, to make the drop, to react, to get barreled in front of the beach and make it out and like have this moment that I didn't end up winning the contest, but that moment for me was like, it was an accumulation of my year's work in the water, but then also on a personal level to have enough confidence in myself to like do that. I was like, that was pretty cool. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like everything that you've worked toward coming together. It reminds me, there's a famous story about Pablo Picasso where he was at a coffee shop and somebody said, "Hey, Pablo, would you do a drawing for me?" And so he pulls out a piece of paper, sketches something. It took 30 seconds and hands it to him. And he says, that will be $10,000. And she says, $10,000, that took you 30 seconds to draw. And he says, no, it took me a lifetime to draw. And that's kind of the idea. It sounds like everything sort of came together. That's amazing. Do you still remember every detail of that specific wave?
I remember, I think it felt like time kind of slowed down in the beginning part because that was the most intense part of the wave. The actual, like, after I made the drop and like got underneath the lip, that part kind of went fast, but the moment of like, like that, it took my breath away for a second. That was the moment that I remember all the details.
I mean, I think that's probably what peak performance is. Like you remember that moment as a moment of peak performance. It's got to be super satisfying. All right, last question. This is an easy one. What's one thing you're looking forward to right now as we sit here? It can be big, can be small, but like right now, when you think about the rest of your day or week, what are you looking forward to?
I'm honestly, I'm looking forward to lying in bed with my husband and my dogs tonight and watching Netflix and going to sleep holding hands. That
sounds pretty idyllic. All right. Well, let's not get in the way of that. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been amazing. And as I said earlier, I think every single thing you talked about, you may not even recognize this. It applies to everyone. Like no matter what your pursuit is, all these lessons from surfing and from any other field, it all works together. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's been so much fun.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our chat.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Compounding. Be sure to check out our other episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Remember to follow the show. And if you find an episode that you think somebody else would resonate with, please share it with them. That's the best way that this show is going to grow. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.